Quite a young age. Like I was pretty religious. I went to church many times. 2 times a week I would attend these sort of gatherings. Here's someone who's done it before. He really built this business and experienced all these problems and overcame them. So I was thinking, okay, why don't we just work on this together, right? So that's kind of how Story started. For me, like the biggest possible vision for Story is that, yeah, like everyone's going to be using AI, right? There's no question. You can't stop it. So our goal is to move beyond that and not just have it as an analogy.
네, 안녕하세요. 디파이 농부 조 선생입니다. 오늘은 스토리 프로토콜의 이제 공동 창업자인 제이슨 자오를 모시고 스토리 프로토콜이 어떻게 창업을 하게 되었는지, 그리고 공동 창업자는 과거에 어떤 일을 했고 어떤 계기로 이제 창업 전선에 이제 뛰어들었는지 알아보도록 하겠습니다. So could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jason. I am the co-founder of Story, and my background is actually more in AI before joining the blockchain space. So I was the youngest product manager at DeepMind, and before DeepMind, I was at Stanford where I studied philosophy and then got a master's in computer science.
So before entering the crypto space, what career did you build?
Yeah, so before I was in blockchain, I spent a lot of time in AI. 4 years at Stanford. Really starting my first year, I was already really interested in AI research. So I spent a lot of time in university doing AI research as a researcher. And then when, sometime during Stanford and then also after I graduated, I was, one of the product managers there. AlphaGo, AlphaZero, these really advanced AI agents that were beating, Lee Sedol in chess, right? Or StarCraft players or Go players, right? That was what I was working on. And it wasn't just that research, it was how do you take this abstract research and actually make it useful? Because ultimately, if you don't try to build a product out of it, it's just a demo, right? It's a very impressive demo that an AI can play Go and beat, one of the world's best Go players. But how do you actually make that useful? So that's always what I was interested in. And that was my role at DeepMind, is taking that research and finding ways to put that into YouTube or to Google search. Or what was most exciting was actually building brand new projects and brand new products that couldn't exist without that research. So that's kind of my background before blockchain, and obviously still thinking about AI, right? But just in a different angle. Kind of one of the reasons I believe in the vision of what we're doing at Story and how I got interested in that is really just seeing the way that, being able to see the future actually, right? Because at DeepMind, we had something like ChatGPT years before it came out, right? Because it was internal research. I was able to see into the future and see what AI might do. Like if everyone in the world had something like a ChatGPT, what might that do, right? And I was already starting to talk to these AI agents when I was at DeepMind and playing around with them. And it was pretty clear that they were going to continue to get better. And today we're seeing that now, right? There's these scaling laws around if you have more data, if you have more compute, if you put in more money, ultimately the AI models will get more intelligent. But the big open question that hadn't been answered yet was, how do you actually make this sustainable? Because we were already trying to basically scrape the entire internet, and all these large models are, right? Every model is scraping the entire internet, but how do you actually compensate creators, platforms like Reddit, for their data, right? Because otherwise, there's no way to keep this going. There's no way to keep incentivizing people to continue creating if AI is going to leverage their work and produce without any compensation. So to me, that felt like a big open question, and I was able to see even, like the lack of response or lack of really any direction. So to me, the biggest open question in AI, what I saw at DeepMind, was not really about like a performance question. It was really about this structural economic question of how to incentivize IP and how to protect it in the age of AI.
So as I am preparing the interview, I researched about you, and then I found the one interesting thing is your major is the philosophy. So why did you study the philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Yeah, philosophy is not a degree that people pick when they want to have a good job, right? No, I mean, I've always been really interested in philosophy. And growing up, the story of how I got interested in it was quite a young age. Like I was pretty religious growing up, and I went to church many times, and 2 times a week I would attend these sort of gatherings. So growing up, I was very religious, and I was actually the first in my family to be religious, and so it was sort of like a very good value system, right? And with Christianity especially, it gives you a framework for what's good and what's bad and how to live your life. And I think growing up, that's a very comforting thing to have. But as I got into high school, I started, I had to take these world history classes. So I had to learn about all the different religions, how these religions developed. And of course, I learned about, Judaism, how Judaism led a branch of it led to Christianity, how the early Christians split off into Islam, and so there's all these different sects of religions, these branches, and it felt to me like somewhat arbitrary, somewhat random, and that kind of challenged my faith, right? So now I started thinking, well, I don't know, is there a God? Like, is there any meaning? Big questions like, what's the meaning of life? What is good and bad? And, what am I here for, right? No longer, I didn't have the answers to anymore because I wasn't, fully, I didn't really have that faith anymore. So that's when I started to, in trying to answer those questions, started to read more philosophy. So I read Marcus Aurelius, and I started to get into more Stoicism. And then I also read Nietzsche and a lot of the German philosophers at the time. Started to sort of orient and create a framework for my own life based on philosophy. I actually started, one of my weird hobbies in high school was to just read the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Like, it was just kind of like the Wikipedia of philosophy, and I just read that every night, and it was just kind of very interesting to me. So I would say philosophy for me was like a way of, first of all, creating my own value system and understanding, like, having good answers to the big questions for myself and for society. And then when I got into Stanford, I actually chose Stanford because it's a school that is really, really strong at entrepreneurship and technology, because it's in Silicon Valley, but also it has a very good humanities program. So if you look at Stanford, it's actually, a lot of the research there in the humanities is very strong. So I felt like it was a place where I could do both. And for me, when thinking about story, but also just in general in my career, I really don't find pure technology interesting. I find that anything I'm interested in, technology it's only interesting because there's some sort of historical, philosophical framework, and I want to feel like I'm building for the next era of something for humanity, right? And so I do think blockchains are going to be a new era of the internet. I think that the philosophy behind blockchains, both the early libertarian philosophy that motivated it, as well as sort of almost a socialist philosophy of DAOs, as well as the pure capitalism that a lot of people see. And it's just such an interesting and intellectually rich technology. And that's kind of what got me interested. But philosophy was always sort of a personal passion of mine. And then it also fuses into the way I approach technology, right? Thinking about it from an intellectual perspective. And that's what motivates me to build story, and also to build and to be an entrepreneur, is that I think this is one of the ways that, if you have a philosophical vision of the world, you can actually put it into practice and experiment.
What was the first reaction when you told to your parents that you are studying in the philosophy? Because in the Asian country, most of our parents expect to be some like the doctor or lawyers.
Yeah.
What was the reaction?
Well, that's very funny you ask, because basically, I also study computer science, right? So I basically just told them I was studying computer science because, it's like, obviously when I was about to graduate and everything, I told them I started to study philosophy, but because I always had this interest in engineering, I just always, talked to them about my computer science classes and what I was doing in those. So yeah, it was good to have the computer science degree as well. Otherwise, that conversation would not have gone as well. But yeah, I have an older brother. He's a doctor. So I think my parents already had one doctor in the family. So I think they were more able to because of my brother. My brother walked so I could run, right? So I could do something more risky. But yeah, it's definitely not a super easy conversation.
Okay, so after undergraduate year, then you decided to study in the computer science as the master degree. So what motivates you to study the engineering and then the computer science?
Yeah, well, to me, I always, even though I got a master's in computer science, it was actually always both at the same time. So the first year at Stanford, I was already taking philosophy classes and already taking computer science classes. So it wasn't a process where I studied philosophy and then I switched to computer science. I was always interested in both, and in particular how they intersect. So for my honors thesis, I actually wrote like a 70-page thesis about how the internet technologies, especially social media, actually affect traditional political theories around democracy. So I've always been extremely interested in how these two intersect. And like I said, that's why I'm interested in technology and why I'm interested in building things, because it's a great way to actually shape politics and shape society through technology. Like, technology is probably the most rapid and effective way to actually move humanity forward and change the structures of our society. So to me, these were always in parallel. Like, if I weren't interested in philosophy, I probably wouldn't be interested in technology. And so they actually kind of feed into each other.
Okay. How did you start the story protocol after DeepMind? How did you meet your co-founder, the SY, the before?
Yeah, so like I said, after I quit DeepMind, I had a lot of free time. So I was hacking on different projects. I was at DeepMind, I was a product manager, so my coding skills got a little rusty. So I was learning Solidity, I was writing smart contracts, I was building a bunch of hackathon projects and attending a lot of the crypto events in the Bay Area at the time. So I met a lot of interesting people who helped me a lot. And so every day it was almost like a college, like self-designed school, right? And so that was a lot of fun. And and primarily my interest was in, like I said, just looking at the existing solutions. It was it was all money. So Bitcoin is digital gold. You have stable coins as instant global payments and settlement. And then you have Ethereum, which is in all the DeFi protocols, which are essentially a parallel Wall Street or financial system, right? And that's all super exciting. And I learned a lot about the history of money by learning about crypto. But what struck me was that, blockchains are general purpose technology, right? It's not like a hammer. You can only, use it against a nail, right? It's actually very general purpose and very flexible. So it's almost like if you were looking at AI and for whatever reason, AI was only used in the healthcare industry, but not in any other industry, right? Then you start thinking, well, AI is pretty general purpose. Like you could probably use it, if you can use it for healthcare, you could probably use it for finance, you could probably use it for, search, you could use it for consumer. And that's what I was thinking is, why aren't there any real solutions for content? And it's not that money isn't interesting, it is, but I wanted to build something that could scale and scale this technology and make it so successful that it could become invisible, right? Like the way that we use HTTPS, you use it every time you go on a website, but no one's screaming about how they love HTTPS. Wow, it's my favorite product. It's so useful. I wanted to build something that fundamental. And to me, the opportunity to do that was in the world of IP. And so I was starting to explore some more consumer applications. And that's around the time when I got introduced to SY through a mutual friend who was in the Korean crypto ecosystem. I think I was supposed to meet SY because we both study philosophy actually. So we had that in common. And he had just sold his company Radish to Kakao. And he was looking in the blockchain space as well. So we both had like a lot of similarities, that he's obviously experienced the problems of IP firsthand from his business and wanted to build something for entertainment through blockchain to solve those problems. I was thinking about it more from an intellectual perspective of, this is what the world would need in the next era of the internet. And we both had the same vision. So I was actually supposed to meet SY on a Tuesday, I remember. But I think it was a Tuesday. But then Monday was the first day of this accelerator called Alliance. I'm sure many of you have heard about it, but it's a Web3 crypto accelerator. I had been working on some smaller projects, got into Alliance, and then SY had gotten into Alliance as well. And so it was the Monday before I was supposed to meet SY. And we're doing these introductions. We have to talk about what we're building, and I realized, this is the guy I'm supposed to meet tomorrow, and we're in this accelerator together. So then we ended up talking, obviously, through the introduction. And so we had these two touch points, and it became pretty obvious working with SY that, he's an incredible visionary. He has such a strong passion and energy and conviction in what he's doing. And he brought this really extremely profound experience in business, right? Whereas I'm much younger and very optimistic and had this grand vision. But then seeing SY, it's like, okay, here's someone who's done it before, right? Over 10 years, he really built this business and experienced all these problems and overcame them. So I was thinking, okay, we have very complementary skill sets. Like he's got this business experience, I have this tech background, and why don't we just work on this together, right? So that's kind of how Story started.
What was the first impression of SY?
I mean, he's so energetic and he's so passionate, and he has such a strong vision and presence, and it's kind of like hard not to believe in what he says, right? Like I think that was my first impression. And also I found him like very down to earth and very friendly and very humble, because I knew SY had a successful exit, so I had some conception in my mind of like a successful businessman in a suit, going to some fancy steak dinner or whatever, and being very serious. But SY is actually kind of very playful and just very relatable. Like I felt like I could work with him, and it wasn't like, okay, now you're working for me. Like now I'm gonna boss you around and like this and this and this. It just felt like a partnership, right? And that was really exciting to me. So I think that was my first impression. And to be honest, like it hasn't really changed much. Like I think that's kind of just who he is.
What went through your mind when SY proposed to make Story Protocol together?
It was a big choice, right? Like, cause to me, like I said, I had been working on many of my own ideas over the course of 3 or 4 months, and like I had gotten some commitments for funding, and then like I was in this accelerator. And I'm the type of person that, like, growing up, my other interests outside of philosophy and basketball, I was very obsessed with basketball, but other than philosophy and basketball, it was really just entrepreneurship. Like I read Steve Jobs' biography very young, Walter Isaacson, and this idea of like being an entrepreneur who could combine the humanities and the arts with the sciences and with technology was something that I've always wanted to do. So I knew I wanted to work for myself, right? And so for me, the reason obviously we had this vision alignment, and I felt like he was so experienced and we had complementary skill sets. There's a lot of reason to be excited. So I was very excited and honored. But the thing that really convinced me was that I could work with SY as a partnership, right? Like my personality is I don't really want to work in a big company for a very long time. Like DeepMind was almost an exception. I was like, okay, this is such a unique opportunity. I'm just going to do it. But in general, like if I hadn't felt like SY was going to be, the type of person who's humble enough to let me also, have such a strong share in that vision, then I wouldn't have done it. So for me, when he asked me, I was thinking like, okay, clearly, from a business success perspective, like this makes sense. But from a psychological perspective, based on my mission and what I've always wanted to do, like, does that align? And that was a question I had to ask myself, but it was very easy to say yes. Yeah.
So compared to the DeepMind, what is the pro and cons during the running the business?
There's no pros of DeepMind. There's no, it's all, no, I mean, that's probably too extreme, but it's much better, right? Like this is to be working at Story and building this with such an exceptional team, right? I think the benefit of working at DeepMind is that you have an existing mission, you have an existing technology, and your job is just take something that everyone already knows and understands and make it useful. No one has to be convinced about why is AlphaZero and AlphaGo incredible, right? Everyone understands. You just look at it and it just looks incredible. Like, so you don't have to convince anyone that what you're doing is interesting. You just need to actually solve that problem. And so you only have to tackle one small stack, like one small piece of the puzzle, right? You don't have to hire anyone, like, there's a whole hiring process. So all you have to do is just focus on your job, right? So like, I think there's some sort of clarity and focus in there where your success and your failure is very clear. But the downside is you don't have any agency really in some ways. And the feedback loop is very slow. Like unlike blockchain, AI feedback loop, you have to train the model, you have to fine tune the model, you then have to deploy the model, and then you have to put it into a product and then build a front end around the product and then see if someone might like that, right? Obviously you can accelerate that process a little bit, but it's very slow and it's much slower. Like as a young person, I wanted to grow very quickly and I wanted to get quick feedback. Like I want to know if something's not working, I want to know, hey, Jason, like this is dumb and don't do it and learn from that. Like that's what I wanted, but it could take years at Google to kill a product. It could take years to get to market. And so I didn't want to wait 3 years to grow, right? So that was another thing about working at a large company. It's just a very different experience. So for me, at Story, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of challenges because no one is like you as a founder. I have to figure out what is the vision, what is the strategy. When something goes wrong, like it's on me and I'm the one who's accountable. And so there's a lot more pressure in that way, but ultimately like that makes it more fun and more exciting. And the fact that we have to prove ourselves and our value and our worth, that's motivating to me because I'm a competitive person. I think, look, I want to prove that this is just like philosophy is all about arguments and reasoning. Like, I think for me, it's like, okay, well, like I'm not going to argue with you just online. Like that's not very productive. I want to show you, like, this is my proof. And so that's what we're building at Story. And so to be able to do that every day and have the agency to do that and to be able to just work with some of the best people that like just learn from them and learn so much so quickly. It's a huge blessing. Like I think the growth rate, the learning rate, just absorbing so much from all of my team members, it's just way more fun, right? It's like a little more stressful, obviously, but it's way more fun.
So recently, the Story Protocol announced you guys are successfully closed the Series B, the fundraising, at the valuation of a $2.2 billion. How's the feeling when you hear about that?
It's definitely an exciting moment, and I'm really proud of the team. And it's a big number, but my focus, I'll be honest, my focus as a founder, it's always the product announcements that excite me. Like it's the fundraising announcements. It feels great to be able to share that with the world, but more importantly, it feels great to be able to celebrate the people in the team and the work that we put in. So it's a celebration, it's a milestone, but raising money in and of itself is not a product, obviously, right? Like an announcement is not a product. And so to me, I mean, it's a good moment to just take a step back and say, like, we've come very far, and like a lot of extremely intelligent long-term investors who have picked some of the biggest winners in the previous, decades of the internet history have decided to bet on us, and that's a huge honor. But at the same time, I'm not gonna feel like we've done something until we've pushed it out there and people can actually use it, and it's something they can touch and feel, right? So for me, I'm much more excited about launching the public testnet, launching the mainnet, getting these real ecosystem partners, solving their problems, and having our partners say that through Story, we're able to do things that we couldn't do before. That's going to feel like we're crossing some sort of finish line. It's not the finish line, but that's more of a finish line for me than it is a fundraising milestone. So for me, it's like, it's great, it's exciting, it's encouraging, but ultimately nothing matters unless we build a product that people want to use. And so ultimately that to me is the most exciting, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
And what problem are you solving right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that what our investors are seeing in Story is that this is, look, I think all venture is about risk, right? You're taking a bet. So no one knows what the future is going to hold, but there's a lot of solutions out there for DeFi already, right? So if you're thinking from an investor's perspective, you're thinking, what vision of the future do I believe in that is completely blue sky, open territory, right? Like, what's the next wave of adoption for blockchains? Because we've seen DeFis, we've seen NFTs, we've seen a lot of different projects, and there's still room, obviously, to grow. Like, obviously, I think the entire world will be using stablecoins, but fundamentally, what Circle, for example, has done, they've already built out that infrastructure, right? So it's about scaling from 100 to 10 million, right? Or 100 to 100 million. There's about scaling. But with IP, like, blockchains just haven't been applied to this use case at all. But IP is one of the largest asset classes in the world. And with AI, there's a very clear reason of why now, right? Like, it's a very clear reason. Everyone is going to have a godlike creator tool in their phone. Everyone in the internet can share content immediately through social media with the rest of the world and create high quality content for free. So we're entering into a new era of creativity, but we're still using this like very old legal system to apply it, right? And so just like Circle kind of on-ramped the US dollar and fiat on chain, and is a massive business, and it's the foundation for a new economy, I think what our investors see is they're betting on this vision that blockchains can be used for something beyond money, and that this IP is actually something much bigger, potentially, than even money, right? So that's, I think, what they're betting on. And of course, I think just the exceptional team of, SY's seasoned experience as a successful Web2 entrepreneur, and also a lot of the leadership team. I think what's unique about Story is we have a lot of leaders on the team who have built L1s before, right? So our CTO, Leo, is from Harmony, and he was the first engineering hire there. He built out the entire layer one, right? So it's like a lot of these layer ones, and it's very impressive, but the founders, it's their first time building layer one. But we have really, seasoned people on the tech side who've done it before from scratch. And Waylay was, leading ecosystem at Flow and at Dapper, which of course they've done an amazing job onboarding some of the world's biggest IPs like the NBA and Disney. And I think we have a lot to learn from them, but also to improve, right, even further. And so for us, it's like having this exceptional seasoned team that's done it before, learn from what's worked and what hasn't. My experience at DeepMind, one of the world's leading AI companies. And so I think the team combined with the vision is probably what they're seeing, but obviously you'd have to ask them. That's just kind of what makes me super optimistic.
So what could be the use case of a story protocol, you think?
Yeah, well, I think anytime, like, think about, for example, like, I just think YouTube is a great example, right? Before YouTube was invented, if you took some video on your phone, like, you couldn't share it with the world. There's just no way to do that. After YouTube, now everyone with an iPhone, which is everyone in the world, basically, right? Or a lot of people, they can now share videos, right? So think about that mental model and apply that to law. Before Story, you need a lawyer. Like, same to say, it's like you need a Hollywood studio to publish a video, right? Like before YouTube. With Story, like before Story, you need, in order to do anything with licensing, with remixing, to protect your IP, you need a team of lawyers. And also anyone you're trying to do a deal with, they need a team of lawyers too, right? So that's before Story. After we launch, if you want to monetize your IP, if you want people to be able to license your work, you don't need any intermediaries. You don't need a human to represent you. You don't need someone to translate mountains and mountains of legal text. Basically, we're on-ramping the legal system, and starting with IP, right? So to give you some concrete use cases, one of them is, how do creators monetize in the age of AI, right? Like right now, it's even unfair to expect OpenAI to do 100 million licensing deals with everyone in the world. They can't do that. They just don't have the time, and it's unreasonable, right? So now what if through software, you can create licensing agreements with a single API call? So if you're a creator, you can actually work alongside AI instead of just fighting against it, right? It's not just opt out. We can allow a creator to opt out, but it's about, okay, here's my voice, I'm registering on Story, and I'm gonna write terms on chain, programmatically, machine readable, about how AI can train on this and use this IP. If they use it, then they have to compensate me in this or that way. Like, all that can be expressed on chain, and it's also backed by the law, right? So you have this link where you're on-ramping over time the legal system. And so there's use cases in AI where creators can monetize and let anyone train on their voice. There's use cases where with creator tools that are where people create content, they're automatically registering on Story on the back end so that any other app, whether it's a creator tool, whether it's a social media, whether it's an AI app, they can actually like see that IP on Story and license it in to any other app instantly. So now you have this composability across apps, right? Which is very important for, IP liquidity and building a network effect around IP. So I think the use cases are just going to be very infinite. And honestly, I'm just giving kind of like the dumb use cases that I can think of now. But as we saw with, Ethereum, like a lot of the use cases are unexpected. Like you don't really know what's going to happen. So those are just some early ideas, and we have apps building all those ideas. But I think as the ecosystem matures, it will become a very general purpose tool. And so the use cases may not even be easy to imagine right now.
So what is your ultimate goal of the Story protocol and personal goal?
Yeah, well, I would say long-term, decades-long vision for Story is to build a sort of new era of content and of culture that can empower creativity in an era where AI is inevitable, right? So we want, I love AI. I think it's amazing. I spent many years of my life doing AI research. It's going to change the world, right? But is it going to change the world, at least in the creative world? Is it going to change it for the better or for the worse, right? Because technology isn't linear, and not all technologies actually benefit the people that are using them. And so I think for me, like the biggest possible vision for Story is that, everyone's going to be using AI, right? There's no question. You can't stop it. So is it going to be a vision of the future where AI is open and AI allows everyone who participates in every step of the way, whether you're providing IP, whether you're a model trainer, is it going to allow everyone to succeed together, or is it going to be a battle of like 4 or 5 large companies against the world, right? And so that's the biggest possible vision. And I think intellectually speaking, like what excites me about Story is, like I said, we're kind of a blockchain that's not focused on on-ramping the world of money to the digital world, but on-ramping the world of law. And you think about the word smart contracts, that actually came because of the comparison with legal contracts. Because for the first time, you have software that can make hard commitments to people, right? That's what blockchains are. You can write, or that's what smart contracts are. You can write programs that make hard commitments regardless of the hardware. And so software can actually, be trusted, and it's almost like a legal contract, right? So our goal is to move beyond that and not just have it as an analogy, but have it as a reality where we're onboarding the legal system on chain. And our thesis is, just like when we first started using, any sort of digital finance, any fintech tools, people still thought of cash as the primary source of value. But now the digital, your bank account's all digital, right? You don't have like a bunch of cash you're counting and then you're thinking, well, I also have this digital money. No, all your money is digital. Maybe not all of it's on chain, but all your money is digital. And now the digital world has taken precedence. In the financial world, at least, the digital world has taken precedence over the physical, right? We look at our bank account, it's all in a database somewhere, and we have some cash at hand, right? Some of us might not even have any cash. So over time, you've moved from this physical world to the digital world as being the primary one. Right now, if you look at the legal system, we're all still using cash, right? We're all using these pen and paper legal contracts. And at first, the first adopters of Story, they're gonna kind of see the on-chain IP, the programmable IP as like an extra thing, right? But as that grows, it's going to be a network effect. So eventually we hope that one day a lot of the licensing and legal transactions will actually be done digitally, and it'll be very rare to actually have to use a physical legal contract in the same way that's sort of rare to have to use cash, right? So that's our ultimate vision, is to usher in like this kind of new era of blockchain adoption that isn't just focused on money.
Do you have any last word to the community or someone who are preparing their own business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, for anyone thinking about starting their own business, I think you can't think about it too much. If you're thinking about it in a very rational way, it's never rational, right? So you either have to do it and be happy with being doing that thing for 5+ years, 10+ years, or not do it at all. Because if you're thinking about pros and cons, there's a lot of cons, right? It's not like walk in the park. So if you look at I study a lot of successful entrepreneurs. Like for these successful entrepreneurs, at some point, for some of them at many points in their life, the rational thing to do was to quit. But they were irrational. They were almost stupid, you could argue, right? Because if you look at the pros and the cons of continuing the business and keep on working on it, they're just not there. So I think if you're thinking about it, then maybe don't think about it as hard and either do it or don't. But then in terms of being able to work with story, like, be honest, nothing we're doing here matters if it's not useful to creators and if it's not useful to builders who are building consumer applications, right? So ultimately, if no one uses our infrastructure, it's useless. And so to me, my top priority as a founder and our top priority as a team is supporting new use cases that we can power through the programmable IP primitive. And so, it's really important, like if you look at IP and where new IPs are being created, it's here in Korea. Like, obviously the US has some of the biggest IPs in the world. We have Harry Potter, for example, we have Marvel. But if you look at the box office, the movie sales in the US, like for example, 2022, the top 10 movies by revenue were all sequels. It's like Avengers 12, like Spider-Man 14, right? It's like the same thing. They're just making sequels and sequels. But if you look at where new IP is coming from, that's interesting. It's coming out of Seoul. It's coming out of Korea, right? So it's like, it's Parasite, it's Blackpink, it's New Jeans, it's BTS, it's Squid Games. So there's so much dynamism here. And also I think the Korean community is one that's much more friendly on crypto and knows how to use on-chain primitives much better per capita than in the US. So there's a great combination where, I think that if I had to take a bet on like who's going to be just like Mr. Beast is kind of like the, biggest YouTube creator, he kind of sets the category of who's going to be the Mr. Beast of story and a programmable IP. I actually think probably is going to be Korean, right? Or because there's just so many factors at play here. So I would say like I really encourage you to, once our public testnet is live, to try it out and to give us feedback, whether it's good or bad. And then also if you're a developer and an entrepreneur, to give us a chance. And our focus is to really support each ecosystem project on an intimate level. It's not just like we'll send you an email or, we'll start a group chat. Like a lot of our builders, like they have the keys to our office, like literally they can go into the office anytime. So we want to have these close relationships because we think building anything new is extremely hard. There's no playbook and I can't tell you like what's going to be successful, right? Like, because it hasn't been done yet. So we have to figure it out together. So I would say, if that's interesting to you, like we're here to support you.
Thank you for your time.
Of course. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.